Remember Band-Aid and Live Aid? First the charity single in December 1984, and then the stadium events in Wembley and Philadelphia in the summer of '85. BBC journalist Michael Burke had reported on a biblical famine in Ethiopia, harrowing coverage that went viral even in the years before social media. In response, musicians Bob Geldof and Midge Ure collaborated on both the single and the concerts, viewed by nearly 2 billion people in 150 countries, and a fundraising legend was born. Feed the World was the chorus of the single. Let them know it's Christmas time. Feed the world. And in our world of plenty, they sang, we can spread a smile of joy, throw your arms around the world at Christmas time. It's not Christmas time yet, of course, but winter is coming. Both of those aid efforts raised fortunes from a public moved to help the ghostly shadows of fellow human beings they were shown dying before their eyes. To this day, there's debate about how much Live Aid changed or improved things in Ethiopia, how much food got into the mouths of the starving, and how much money was diverted into the coffers of the Ethiopian government that had deliberately worsened the impact of the famine. The media concentrated on a simple story of drought killing crops year after year, causing famine. In fact, while natural forces were at play, the worst of the harm to humanity was caused not by nature, but by the inhumanity of corrupt politicians deliberately and calculatedly denying food to that part of their own population they regarded as their enemy in a savage civil war. There's no denying, however, that as far as most of the watching billions were concerned, what mattered was getting food to people in desperate need. They were shown pictures of people starving to death in the present, right there and then, and put their hands in their pockets in hopes of helping before it was too late. It was all about rescuing fellow human beings sharing the same planet in the same moment. Media, pop stars and scores of other celebs, backed by a generous, well-meaning public, all united to try and feed the world. Revered economist Amartya Sen has described how people end up starving en masse, not on account of natural disasters, but because governments and other bad actors see to it that they are denied food. Quote, starvation is the characteristic of some people not getting enough food to eat. It is not the characteristic of there not being enough food to eat. Fast forward nearly 40 years after Live Aid and have a look at what the media and much of the rest of the mainstream are calling for now. The Green Agenda, Agenda 2030, Net Zero and the rest of a hellish potpourri of policies guaranteed to condemn hundreds of millions to death by poverty, death by starvation, misery for want of the means ever to make their lives better. Half a lifetime after Live Aid and earnest hopes of throwing arms around the world, the new clarion call is to snuff out the lights here in the West, to usher in the cold where there has been warmth, and to see to it that the achievement of the Industrial Revolution and centuries of ingenuity that conspired to lift billions of people around the world out of poverty are dismantled and unwound. Upon the altar of the new religion of saving the planet of tomorrow, prioritising that as yet non-existent world over the here and now, millions upon millions of those living today, perhaps billions in the end, are to be sacrificed as though they don't exist. Any last vestige of camouflage preventing us perceiving the true nature of the messiahs of the Green Agenda is falling away day by day. Celebrity truant Greta Thunberg's latest proclamation is that it's time to transform the West's oppressive and racist capitalist system. She means overthrow it, thereby laying bare, at last, the motivation of her handlers. And it has nothing to do with ensuring the future for generations to come. It's about gifting the planet to the few right now. Orwell said about the communists of his day that they don't give a damn about the poor, they just hate the rich. By the rich, Orwell meant the titled and entitled rich. By now, the shadows behind Thunberg are the super-rich, the ultra-rich, and those richest of the rich loathe and wish to see utterly destroyed by their cynical reworking of communism the uppity middling sort, those with the temerity to seek to own their own homes, to own their own businesses, indeed to own much of anything at all, bar a smartphone with a digital ID built in alongside a wallet for programmable food tokens. Don't overlook either the fact that the sock puppets of Just Stop Oil are financed in part by millions of dollars from the granddaughter of oil tycoon J. Paul Getty. The decadent, self-indulgent, hypocritical virtue signalling is enough to make a billy goat lose his lunch. Where Live Aid called for help for those alive now, if only barely living, now the latest righteous insist those clinging by their fingertips to the outside edge of existence don't matter and must be ignored, cast aside as collateral damage. Who cares about the inconvenient living when there's a fantasy future to sell to the gullible? Where the great and the good and the media once sought to save those at death's door, now they back policies guaranteed to hustle the huddled masses through that exit with a swift kick to their bony backsides. What we're witnessing is an unholy inversion of the human and humane urge to offer help to fellow travellers along a road that's already too hard for billions. Upon that road, we have lost our way. At the same time, our humanity, what makes us human, is being readied for consignment to the dustbin of history. Why have messy, maddening humans when you can have the product of binary code that does what it's told? Estimates of the death toll for the Ethiopian famine of the mid-1980s ranged from 300,000 to 1.2 million. Millions more were displaced, made refugees. Some of the same characters who campaigned to help those poor back then, in league now with their 21st century successors, have linked arms in support of ruinous policies that might mean the death sentence not for 1 million people in one country, but for hundreds of millions in all manner of countries around the world in the years ahead. If you were going to set out deliberately to ensure the poorest people in the world's poorest countries were kept in murderous poverty or newly cast into that hell, then you would deny them access to cheap energy while simultaneously undermining the ability of the developed world to produce and distribute the food surplus that might keep them alive in the meantime. Those are precisely and unavoidably the consequences of net zero and the rest of the nonsense that will be preached at COP27, as well as day after day by politicians of all stripes and a consistently complicit media. Having carefully and forensically rubbished the history of the West, rewriting our heritage and cultural inheritance until the efforts of our predecessors are made a litany only of evil, cruelty and greed, fit for nothing but tearing down and forgetting, and persuading too many that the present is as flawed and shameful as that past, if not more so. Those latest self-appointed saviours of the world are busy selling their insane and utterly unachievable vision of the future. The road to that halcyon future, populated by its green-living, fake meat and insect-eating, docile, compliant and perpetually spied-upon citizens, is to be laid upon the corpses of the inconvenient, here and now, real-life poor, all the messy millions of them. All those souls in want right now of accessible, reliable energy that might power them towards the sort of lives we have enjoyed here, in desperate need of abundant food of the sort that has for generations been available to us, thanks to the enterprise, invention and sheer hard work of clever farmers, raising livestock and crops with the help of skills and wisdom learned over millennia, all are to be dismissed to oblivion, so the ideologues of the WEF, the WHO, the UN, the prophets of Agenda 2030 and Net Zero can realise their fantasies of control. Feed the world, remember? And in our world of plenty we can spread a smile of joy. Throw your arms around the world. Not now. We won't. Not any time soon, and maybe never again. The four horsemen of the apocalypse are usually pictured together, and for a reason. Where there's a famine, there will soon be disease, and then war, and always death. During times of hunger, most of the dying is caused by the opportunistic diseases lying in wait. Chaos soon reigns, and war is invariably the consequence as factions fight to seize or to maintain control. The shadow of the four will loom yet again over hundreds of millions of the world's poorest and most desperate people. And in the West, shivering in our homes, wondering for the first time in generations what sort of food we will have to eat, how we will heat our homes, won't be throwing our arms around anyone except ourselves for warmth. Feed the world? I don't think so. Another ghost from the past is worth a second look now. In 2006, Al Gore launched his film An Inconvenient Truth about the imminent end of civilization due to man-made global warming. The real inconvenient truth is that Gore's predictions from a movie that netted $50 million at the box office have not come to pass. The prophet of doom, now worth $300 million, who said we could all help save the world by changing our lifestyles, has a $2.5 million home in Nashville with an annual energy bill of $30,000. It's worth wondering how often he sits inside and notes that while he said the ice caps would be gone by now, they've grown in size, or how often He remembers that while he said the polar bears would drown, their numbers have risen steadily for the last 15 years. The man who said Manhattan would be underwater on account of rising sea levels just bought a $9 million villa on the coast of California. Always remember this: the green agenda we're being sold is absolutely not green, requiring as it does the unprecedented mining of hitherto unimagined amounts of base and rare earth metals, also rare minerals, all of that effort dependent upon fossil fuels, the never-ending rape of the world we're supposed to be saving. The International Energy Agency predicts it will be 2207 at the earliest before fossil fuels are set aside. In the US, the Biden administration predicts that even if all governments keep their promises, CO2 eradication cannot occur before 2242, more than 200 years from now. There's food aplenty in this world, there's energy aplenty, but we are to be denied both by yet more of those corrupt politicians. Here's the thing: it's the people alive today, here at home and around the world, the poorest included, who deserve life, a better life. They deserve a future that we could give them now. Who with a human heart would sacrifice today's living for nothing more than a fantasy spun from lies? Not me.